As we'll walk our way down all the boxes here, still some smiles, a lot of nerves. Some confidence built into some of these squads as well. They've all come here to Glendevere Golf Course in Portland, Oregon, to battle with the best, to be the best in the 2019 Nike Cross National.
So once again, when we're our defending champion, Purcellville out of Virginia, they are one of the co-favorites. Also the two teams from California, Newbury Park and Temecula. Out of the Southwest region, Draper of Colorado. These teams using different formulas, different recipes for success. We'll see which one works here today. And again, it's so important to try and go ahead and be really well aware of the number of individuals in the front that are actually, and there's our defending champions right there, Purcellville. Also Eastwood, second time back from the state of Texas at El Paso.
Love the vibe from Eastwood. They were telling me last night how they really want to inspire a part of the country that isn't necessarily known for.
And the gun is off in the 2019 Nike Cross Nationals. Boys race is underway.
Again, 204 runners in the field, total of 22 teams and now 50 individuals. 5 from each region, also 5 at-large individuals nationally.
And Rich, for the benefit of the audience at home and also for here, the scoring of this, and there are individuals who are running for this individual championship, and we'll get some in-race updates on the team scoring, and they'll pull those individuals out as it relates to adding up the overall team scores for the teams in the race.
Right, so the scores we'll see on our screen at the 1 mile marker can be definitely the actual team scores. They've already took out any of those individuals, factoring also, of course, the displacers. Top 5 scoring, of course, in cross country, and we'll see because, again, it's always interesting to see what happens. And we see a couple of kids actually went down here toward the tail end of our lead pack, of our pack overall. Pretty quickly, pretty dense up front. I can say I'm not really too surprised. That's Matt Strongio out of California on the far right, your leader. Right there, Nico Young on his shoulder.
Well, the first Newbury Park jersey to spring out of that pack was not Nico Young or Jace Ashbrenner. Their top two. I don't actually know which Newbury Park guy that is, but he's now fading back through the pack.
And Nico Young there in 3:58 goes over the first of the timing laps as we go through our early stages of this 5-kilometer race at the Glendevere course, and he's already put a little bit of room making an early statement here in this race where he comes in as one of the favorites, 4th in the edition of NXN a year ago, and that great race with Cole Sprout at Arcadia on the track to break the meet record in the 3,200 meters back in April.
Frankly, this is pretty surprising to me to see him go so aggressively so early. I was wondering how he would handle being the favorite in this race, and it has seemed that he wants to challenge anyone to go with him. His coach obviously said he's maybe held back a little bit at the state meet when he nearly broke German Fernandez's course record. You never know how true that is, but it seems pretty clear that they believe it's true because he's going hard.
Yeah, he's an individual that they really want to assure a fast, early pace. He would prefer to go ahead and have somebody else do the work and work off of them. But since it's not happening, he's the kind of kid he will then go ahead and make the move and take the race, create the pace.
Great shot there head on of the crew as they come down into this area with Nico Young in the lead.
And we see Methner and Shoppy just behind him. Methner now moving into second, and those two kind of have to make a decision here. Do they want to put in that move to get up with Nico Young, or do they want to hope that they can measure their effort better and catch him later in the race? Looks like they've decided they're going to drag the pack up to him.
So Young there in front as they pass through the first kilometer of this race. Time to check in with another member of our broadcast team, Colleen Quigley, who's out on the course. Colleen?
Gator, we have followed Nico Young, who is wasting absolutely no time. We are just 1K into the course. He's already got a good-sized gap here, and so he's stringing out the race a little bit, which makes it really exciting. We got a lot of mud puddles out here. I'm sure you guys expected that, but
so
it is super wet.
3.5 minutes into this boys' race. So much of the drama in this race is not what Nico Young is doing at the front, but where all the teams are now finding their scoring runners in the back of this pack. And again, because there's so many top individuals, you really have to rethink how you approach this race on the team side, because it could be that you could be 30 or 40th in the group but still be in a very good position as it relates to team scoring.
Absolutely, and from a pure strategy perspective, it's easier to be at the front because you can see everyone you're racing. You just try to stay in the lead pack as long as you can. Back in the middle of the pack, you really have to manage your effort well, and you have to know that every place, back in the dense, or every few seconds back in that dense part of the pack could be 3 or 4 points.
Look
right
at Josh
here,
Methner.
Right here, poise is going to be so key in this race because coaches talk about the fact of, you got to be aware of the individuals around you, so forth, that you're going to be toward the back. But right now, with this pace going out so hard, these kids in the middle and the back are going to feel even more uncomfortable, and that's going to be desperation to start setting in. So it'll be very interesting. Poise will be key.
And this is way more strung out than we've ever seen here in the boys' race at the beginning. I'm not sure Josh Methner would prefer to be 20 meters down on Nico Young, but I do think he prefers a fast race. We'll see if having that rabbit out in front of him helps him, or if he's already overextending himself trying to keep up with Nico Young.
Ryan Shoppy is also in that group along with 224. That's Caleb Brown, also out of the Midwest region. And Cole Sprout, our top returning finisher from a year ago where he finished third, is also in that group as well.
And that gap just keeps growing.
Just about 3 seconds there for Young over Methner. And the big names in front, 4 of the big ones right here, Strangio in 6th. So 5 of the top 6 in our pre-meet projections are right there. You mentioned Brown. You see Ashburn, the number 2 runner for Newbury Park right there in the top 12. You see our team scores.
Yeah, at that first split, Newbury Park with the overall lead, but very close with Draper out of the Southwest region, and Temecula, who was also part of our early narrative as we went through the previews of the team, also out of the California region, and Wheaton South, Rhode Island, also in the top 5, and the defending champion 2 times over, Purcellville, currently in 6th position. As you see the current leaders at 1 mile, and you see the current leader at 1 mile. It's been a very impressive early run here for Nico Young.
Yeah, he is absolutely going for it, and I think this is really just going to build the tension for the last half of the race. Obviously, if there was a kid that we thought could run away from the field, he would be the one. I mean, when you run 8:40 for 2 miles, that's pretty brisk. It's pretty good. But there is a great field behind him, and if he has misjudged this at all, there are some guys who could be poised to take advantage.
His workouts have been off the charts this year as they were in the springtime. Right now, this year, he had a chance to take down some all-time marks on particular courses. They actually held him back. It's all been about coming ready to dominate at nationals. And right now, against this great field, he's beginning to show that. But I mean, really, in a sense, they, as Coach said, we're not about records, we're about a championship. And we're trying to see if they can pull it off individually and team-wise here today.
Well, they can't be starting with more than 3 or 4 points out of their first 2 guys. So that's helpful when you want to score as few points as possible.
So Nico Young of Newbury Park in the lead here, 7+ minutes into this boys race, the 2019 Nike Cross Nationals. And of course the other storyline for Nico is he will also contribute to the team fortunes of Newbury Park in this overall team race, but the gap continues. He had about 3 seconds on the group that included Methner and Shoppy, and those guys are now climbing that hill as they work their way down towards the part of the area where, part of the racing here is not just the racers in the field of play, but also the spectators who are trying to go back and forth to get a couple of views of the different parts of the course and cheer them on.
So it looks like Methner and Shoppy they've gapped that big pack behind them who's being led by E.J. Holland. I think Shoppy would maybe be the one you would expect to have. If either of them are going to be saving a big move, he'd be the one you'd expect based on past history. But I think really at this point, it's Nico Young's race to lose. He has to have misjudged this a little bit for either of these 2 guys to have a chance to come back and get him.
So Josh Methner there in 2nd. And Shoppy.
And this part of the course is really tough because it's just a slight drag uphill after you did those 2 big steep uphills, and you've got so far to go because they're going to come right back through this area with about a K to go.
He's doubled his margin now. He's about 7 seconds ahead of Josh Methner, currently in second. Methner and Shoppy. Big surprise there, currently in fifth. That is fourth. That's Anthony Grover out of California, running the race of his life. Matt Strangio in the top 8 as well.
And you see Cole Sprout in between Holland and Strangio there.
So a little less than 2K to go now. E.J. Holland up there as well, the product out of Southern Oregon, Northwest Individual Qualifier, state champion here in the state of Oregon, has said all along he's really set up his cross-country season to be ready for this particular race, and is hoping that the leaders ahead of him come back to him shortly. But right now it is Nico Young still with the lead. He has advantaged himself now from 3 seconds at the 1 mile mark to now 8 seconds as they go over the 2 mile timing mats with Methner in second, Shoppy, then Holland. That is your top 4.
And we touted Shoppy's tendency to negative split his races. I think we may have cursed him because Methner now is the one who's moving away into solo second as E.J. Holland and Grover look like they're moving quite well.
Well, I'm struck too by watching Nico. I mean, he looks as though he's in the final stages of the race, but he just continues to grind out the kilometers here and trying to put more and more space on himself and the rest of this star-studded field.
Well, it's pretty clear that Nico's engine is still ahead of where his body is at, and when those two things finally meet up, it's going to be a scary thing.
Yeah, often in his big races, he does not look pretty in a sense. In that sense, his biomechanics are not quite smooth. He is so fit, it doesn't matter.
So top 20 will reach All-American status here, so very much the race continues. As we look back to the front of the field, Josh Methner now a little bit separated from the rest of the field. E.J. Holland has now moved into third, and that's changed from just when they went over the 2 mile mat. And Nico takes a look over his left shoulder, just trying to gauge here a couple of nice opportunities on the latter part of this race course where he can get a sense of where the rest of the field is behind him as he makes the turn. And look at that gap he has now on the rest of the field. And the 2 mile split also gives us an update on the team scores, and not only is Nico Young currently leading on the individual side, but Newbury Park is leading the team scoring ahead of Draper, Temecula, St. Charles, and Rhode Island. That is your top 5 at this point. The defending champions from Purcellville not in the top 10. They are currently 11th with a little less than a mile to go. And another bit of collision, and the conditions on this course certainly deteriorating as they continue to run through the latter stages of the race, and those slips can matter in the team race.
I think part of the challenge here right now, because this pace is so fast, these kids are so worn out, their coordination is beginning to slip a little bit, so any sort of slickness on that course, and they're going down.
Well, we saw Grover there fall, but now he's back up and back into third. I think we saw Easton Allred from Draper, whose team is in the top 3, fall along that corner. Clearly that corner is pretty slick, and I think it's more a matter of the topsoil there really being slick.
That's a good race for the positions 2 through 5. But right now in the front, Nico Young making a statement here at Glendoveer Golf Course as he continues to pull away from the rest of the field.
You know, as dominant as he's been this year, as impressive, this is still hard to believe that against this field, he is right now pulling away this impressively.
We have never seen a boy in this race take it from the gun like this. We've seen some big wins with some big surges in the second half, but we've never seen a guy just go straight to the front and say, either come with me or go home. And I think Methner is running really, really well in second place because he's essentially been on his own nearly the entire time. Shoppy was with him for the first half, but there is still a pretty big pack. I think that's Caleb Brown there with E.J. Holland and Sprout, who are looking to chase him down for second.
And there is Caleb Brown out of the Midwest region. As we're less than a couple of minutes away from the finish here as they go over another timing mat, though that was for the 2 miles, so that will not be official timing mat for any of these racers at this point. Holland and Cole Sprout running side by side.
So we're looking at Caleb Brown, who's in third. We have Methner in second. And then, of course, up front, Nico Young, the man of the moment.
And some of these kids that are right here in this trail pack are running probably the race of their lives. So they're probably in disbelief that they're actually as far behind as someone like Nico Young at this point in time, because, and we actually see Nico now coming up toward the terraces.
He'll come over that second rise. The drum corps will greet him, as well as the fans that have gathered here as he comes into view of the finish line.
Really just an incredible run. I mean, he was obviously the favorite, but to do it in this fashion, it's unprecedented in my book.
Incredible.
As he comes into the final few strides in a race that brought together the deepest field of individuals in the country in 2019, Nico Young will reign supreme as Nike Cross Nationals champion.
And now we see big moves coming up right here, big moves.
Huge pack trying to hunt down Methner, but I think he's going to hang on for second with a really, really great race.
So Methner will come in second, and then a very large group behind him, led by Caleb Brown with a very good performance in finishing in third. Strangio comes up for fourth. Connor Olson out of Littleton will round out the top five. E.J. Holland out of the Northwest region finishing in sixth.
And I think we just saw
Jace Ashbender.
Yeah, Jace Ashbender. I think he's probably fourth in the team score. So that's a great start for Newbury Park in their hopes to take home 2 titles today.
And when I'm just looking right here, you can see an Obima coming into that finish line. I mean, just look at that sea of humanity coming right in, and that's where your team champion is going to be decided right here.
We had at least 2 Draper runners through, so I don't think any team has 3 yet, but I might have missed Temecula.
Newbury Park has 3 in.
Oh, but there's a whole host of Temecula guys across the line now, so it's going to be very tight for this team title.
And we will, of course, hold the team scores until the awards ceremony, so we can reveal the winners in front of the crowd here gathered at the finish line. But that sea of humanity continues to stream in here.
Newbury Park's real one liability was their 5th guy, who was behind the 7th guy from Temecula in the state meet merge. They did have, their 5 was pretty close to their 4. So the question is, did the 5 run great, or was the 4 a little bit off?
They're actually very good through 5, but they did have 1 kid off at the state meet. If they're all on, they're tough to beat because their 3 and their 4 have made improvements in the last few weeks.
Well, we expected it to be a very competitive battle for the team competition, as we'll await for the last of the competitors to come across the line. And a great shot of the steam rising here from the finish line. We're going to let Chris Derrick get off his headset and head down to try to catch up with some of these teams here as they try to reconvene with each other and again celebrate what was a phenomenal race here on the boys' side, and a team race that probably wasn't decided until the very last runner came across the line for the respective top teams. Again, our reigning champions from Purcellville, and perhaps a new champion to be crowned here in 2019, as the field has now come across. And Rich, this was a race that has more a reflection of what we're going to probably talk about when we preview the girls' race, because last year we saw Caitlin Toohey kind of do a version of what we saw Nico Young do this year, which is, if you're going to try to beat me, you're going to have to come catch me, and nobody could.
Right, and she mentioned last year that it was much more aggressive than she wanted to in hindsight. Nico Young, I don't think he actually, in his frame of mind, there was never any second guessing. He was going to go after it, and no one had an answer. again, the different combinations, different styles of teams. Newbury Park, one of the contenders. They have the great 1-2, very solid 3-4-5, but that 1-2 puts them in position. You have Draper. They've had an outstanding top 4. They're trying to go ahead and close that gap to their number 5. I mentioned, first of all, defending champions. They only have 2 kids back, but coming in, they really felt that we were dialed in just as well as in past years. It was more just a mental challenge. And of course, Temecula, so close last year. A lot of the key kids back this year on a mission to try and get in that top spot on the podium. In this kind of a setup with a majority of the top teams having a really good 1 or a 1-2, for those teams that typically can pack it in closely and be in the middle of the pack, this wasn't their day today. There were just too many good teams that this year did have those front runners to get that scoring rolling.
All right, well, let's go down to the finish line area where we'll start to